You will never hear me speak in a negative regard about the 2008 Royal Rumble pay per view. And while I liked the 2008 Royal Rumble, I loved the 2009 Royal Rumble. 2008 Royal Rumble set up a really decent year for the WWE in 2008. For me, the 2009 Royal Rumble just put the icing on the cake for one of the more underrated years in the WWE. The 2009 Royal Rumble pay-per-view, from top to bottom, every match produced the goods. If you are a fan of in-ring action, you got some solid in-ring action on this show. If you're a fan of storytelling, you got a lot of that on this show. If you're a fan of long-term planning and booking, you got a lot of good setup on this show. And I can maybe even make the argument, although I might probably get some opposition from a lot of old school fans, I could probably make the argument that this Royal Rumble 2009 pay-per-view is in the top 5 Royal Rumbles of all time, and maybe even the top 3. This show was really damn good. And if you go back and watch it, you should. Because honestly, I loved this show. From top to bottom. There were some things on it that I would have changed, like the World Heavyweight Championship match in particular. Other than that, I'm perfectly okay with a lot of what happened. For example, Jack Swagger versus Matt Hardy. On paper, that doesn't really sound like a money match. It doesn't sound like a good match. It kind of just sounds like a throwaway. But it was solid enough. Matt Hardy got the best out of Swagger, and it at least showed me that ECW wasn't wasn't that much of a lost cause. You still had some redeeming factors of ECW. And if you're a fan of solid in-ring work, you got some solid in-ring work out of this match. And it kicked off the pay-per-view. It got the crowd into it, which is good. At the end of the match, Jack Swagger went over. You got that frustration out of Matt Hardy. You can tell that he was angry, and we would see that anger later in the night, but we'll get to that in a few moments. Then we get to the Women's Championship match between Melina and Beth Phoenix. The match was okay. This was back when the Women's Championship mattered a little bit more than it did after that. But a solid women's match on a pay-per-view. And it wasn't just one of those random women's matches that doesn't really have a purpose, doesn't really have a point, that you can use for a bathroom or a snack break. It was a match that you can go back and watch and be at least somewhat happy about. It wasn't bad. It was actually solid. The next match was solid, and that was John Cena versus JBL for the World Heavyweight Championship. The only thing that really bothered me about this match was the involvement of Shawn Michaels and that whole JBL versus Shawn Michaels storyline. I get what the WWE was trying to do. They were trying to play off of reality, and that's understandable, and I'm glad that the WWE actually tried to do that. The basis of the story just didn't make any sense. Because here's a guy in Shawn Michaels who has been wrestling since, the late 80s? We get here to 2009 and suddenly he's lost all of his money? Did that not make... That made absolutely no sense. You can understand in maybe even in 1997, 1998, when he had all those drug problems and all those inner demons, that maybe he got to a very, very low point. But here he is, a born-again Christian, free of all those problems, free of all those demons, and suddenly he's out of money? That just doesn't make any sense. The basis of the story was just off. And to me, you kind of just threw John Cena in there because you needed for him to do something at the Royal Rumble to defend his world title against someone. Whatever. I guess from an in-ring standpoint, the match was solid. From a storyline standpoint, this was the only match on the show that frustrated me at least a little bit because the story heading into it was not good. The storyline for the next match and the overall match itself, from start to finish, including one of the best finishes, one of the best executed finishes I've ever seen. I'm not exaggerating when I say this. This is one of my all-time favorite matches. Edge versus Jeff Hardy for the WWE Championship. You have Jeff Hardy as the champion. As Tyler Harper walks in and interrupts my video. Hello, Tyler.
You would think they changed the password even though no one wants to be in this building anymore.
No, why would they change the password? That's too,
I'm amazed they haven't condemned this building yet.
It's getting there. But anyway, Edge versus Jeff Hardy for the WWE Championship. Royal Rumble 2009 co-main event. This match was really damn good, and was a little bit skeptical of why they added a no disqualification stipulation, because you know how Jeff Hardy is in no disqualification matches. So if you're Vicky Guerrero, why would you be setting that up? Well, when you saw the finish, you kind of got it. And the finish to this match was really what hooked me in, because it set up for something even bigger later in the year at WrestleMania. Here's Matt Hardy. You see him at the end of the ECW title match, incredibly frustrated, incredibly angry. He comes out seemingly to help his brother Jeff Hardy. He pulls the trigger when they're going for a concerto, and he hits Jeff Hardy in the face with a chair. Just a shocking moment that caught everybody off guard. You didn't expect to see that. You didn't think that you would see that. And it happened, and it was just one of those moments where even though you were initially shocked and you initially felt for Jeff Hardy, you can look at what they did after this and say they turned this into a really damn good story and had 3 good matches to boot. So an incredible amount of work from Edge and Jeff Hardy, and especially from Matt Hardy at the end of this match. And then we get to the 2009 Royal Rumble match itself. One problem that I have with Rumble matches is there needs to be a balance with how many people you have in the ring. If you have too few people, it's just going to seem like a regular match, and you don't really want that. If you have too many, it doesn't really allow anybody to stand out on their own. It's kind of one big cluster. And I can remember this match, and at one point there were at least 13 or 14 people in the ring. That's just way too many. And it didn't really allow a lot of people to stand out. Some people did, which is good. Dolph Ziggler definitely stood out in him getting eliminated in like 10 seconds. But you got some cool moments in here. Obviously, RVD's big return. You had, I believe, Hacksaw Jim Duggan came back at the end, or towards the end of the match, which was good. But the one thing that this match needed to do, and the one thing that this match ultimately did, was to set up the WWE Championship feud for WrestleMania. And even though you could look at this match and say the finish was going to be predictable, the finish worked. In the Final Four, you have the 3 members of Legacy and Triple H. And Triple H fights off Rhodes and DiBiase, eliminates them, and then here comes Orton from behind to eliminate Triple H. And that moment in itself set up a really damn good story between Orton and Triple H, which was going to be one of your big matches at Mania that year. Unfortunately, the match itself left something to be desired, but no matter what the case may be, if you're a fan of solid in-ring work, Rumble 09 was a good show. If you're a fan of storytelling, Rumble 09 was a good show. If you're a fan of long-term planning, long-term booking, Rumble 09 was a damn good show. And again, I could make the argument, even though it might not be the best one, that Rumble 2009 is in the top 5 Rumbles of all time, and maybe even top 3. It was that damn good of a show, and I recommend you go back and watch.